Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on reversing the trend of veteran suicide by helping veterans transition from military to civilian life and strengthening the mental fitness of our active duty military, veterans, and their families. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments Media, an organization on a mission to strengthen mental fitness worldwide for everyone. Go check them out at pivotalmomentsmedia.com to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have Dr. Crystal Redding with us today. Crystal has held positions as a therapist, psychometrist, and clinical psychologist with a number of organizations since 2013. She held a clinical psychologist role with the Joint Special Operations Command from December 2019 through February 2021. She currently works with the National Healthcare Solution supporting the Scotland Correctional Institution. Crystal holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from Methodist University and a Master of Science degree, clinical psychology from Northwestern State University, and psychology doctoral degree from the Georgia School of Professional Psychology. I'm not going to lie to you, Crystal, that's the most I've had to say psychology or psychiatrist and doctor in an intro ever, but we got through it, and it's obviously qualifying you for this episode. Crystal, welcome to Life After the Military.
Thank you. You missed one. I have 2 masters of psychology.
Well, hey, update your LinkedIn profile, man. I'm happy to put it in here.
I love that we missed one because it makes you even more qualified. No, we're Howie and I are very excited to have you here today because, look, we're on a very strong mission here. You're a highly qualified person, and we know there's going to be a lot of knowledge and education that comes out of this episode. So it's really our pleasure to have you here today.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and Lee, if you don't mind, I normally don't jump in right now, but I feel compelled to do so. I met Crystal several months ago when I had connected with Colonel Jeff Worthington. And those of you who listen or follow or watch our podcast, if you have not seen the Jeff Worthington episode, I really, really sincerely encourage you to listen or view it. Jeff, who is someone I have the utmost respect and admiration for, had a very challenging point in his life as a colonel, as an 06, as the J6, the director of communications for JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command. And Crystal is the one who helped him through that period. He was very transparent and candid with us on the podcast. He's been very transparent and open on social media. And that's what drew me to Crystal. Once Jeff identified Crystal as the person who helped him through his challenge, I knew that it was just a matter of time before I needed to have Crystal on the show. So I have been so looking forward to this, and I really appreciate your being here, Crystal.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and good cause. So.
Absolutely. Cool. And I'll say this too, Crystal, that obviously every situation is different, but hopefully this episode will bring out breaking the stigma behind the need for someone like you and the benefits of being with someone like you. So I'm going to start there. Crystal, again, you worked as a clinical psychologist supporting this Joint Special Operations Command. Describe what you did in that role. And then obviously without naming any names or any specifics that can identify people, describe some of the challenges you saw with members of JSOC, wrestling from a mental fitness perspective.
So I worked with behavioral health there at JSOC. I was embedded in the medical clinic on the compound. And so I worked hand in hand with the providers there in the medical clinic, which was a really great relationship to have because we could refer people to each other. And sometimes people would first come to their, medical doctor, hey, I feel this way. And then those doctors would be like, you know what, I think you need to go talk to Crystal, and send them down the hall. And likewise, sometimes I'd have someone and I'd be like, oh, you know what, I think that maybe there's low testosterone or there's a brain injury. There's something else we need to be considering medically, and send them their way. And so it was really a great relationship to work back and forth. So I worked doing therapy, both mainly individual therapy. I did do some assessments for like ADHD, sleep, some TBI screeners, but majority therapy with the service members of all branches as JSOC serves. But occasionally I did work with family members and do some couple work, mainly when I was working solely with the service member, and then they would say, hey, you know what, I think it's time to bring my spouse in, and they need to hear some things and help fill in some gaps, or what do I need some help with at home? And then they could bring their spouse in, and we could work together as a team to work through whatever the issue was. So that was my main role there. So there's the challenges that they tend to face, believe it or not, or there were a lot that aren't that much different from people that aren't in the military.
Right.
Number one thing they came to me for was relationship problems. Now, the relationship problems might look different because it's encumbered with deployment issues and military things on top of regular relationship stuff. But that's the heart of kind of the human being of interpersonal relationships was the number one, or what they would initially maybe show up for. Maybe when you start digging, then it'd be like, okay, now we're dealing with really PTSD or something like that. And then, of course, with the military population, there's a lot of PTSD,
Right.
a lot of brain injuries, mild brain injury, so people don't even necessarily know that they have a brain injury. They know they got banged around a few times, got a concussion, but they don't see all these little symptoms that come together of like, oh, what you have is a mild brain injury, and you really need to get treatment for that, especially hopefully before you get out of the military, while there's a lot more resources.
Crystal, I want to just jump in real quick, and if you let me, Howie, apologize.
No, Lee.
Yeah, we have that kind of relationship here. This is very, very father-son at times. You right away use the word therapy, and then you brought up other terms, PTSD and things like that. I just know there's people listening to this that they hear the word therapy and they shudder, or they go, I don't need that. I don't need that. One of the major things that we're trying to do is break that stigma with this show, right? And look, for myself, I was an athlete. So when I heard go to the doctor, therapy, even as an athlete, just to your point, right? It's not just the military. So I don't want to do that because they're going to tell me I can't play. Like, you just go down this road of finding reasons not to do it. I'm at a place now that when you say therapy, it's a positive in my mind, right? So can we talk just for a quick second about the stigma surrounding that word, or any word like that? And maybe just explain to the audience why you feel that, we have to break that stigma, why it's a stigma. Just if we can dive into that conversation for a quick moment.
Well, you do, because I think maybe if you look at the historical, what therapy was originally, or people who were having trouble functioning, couldn't live their normal lives, and there's always this negative thing that historically people, oh, you went to a therapist because you have a problem. And then that identifies, puts a label on you. So it's become something, but now I'm hoping people are starting to see that therapy can just be, someone I can go talk to, get some guidance for even daily life issues, and just help me live a more healthier, happier life. Not that I can't live the way I'm living, but that it could be better. And I kind of look at myself as a psychologist. When you say, okay, what does therapy and being a therapist, being a psychologist mean to me? The analogy of a sherpa. So, those guides that take you up, up the mountain, right? You could do it alone, but it's probably not going to go so well, if you don't know that mountain, because it's a new thing and it's dangerous at times. But that sherpa just guides you. The sherpa doesn't do things for you. The sherpa can't carry you there. He just shows you the way to make it a little easier, and sometimes just be beside you on your journey. And that's what I am, right?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
That is a fascinating analogy. Yeah. And maybe to take it into another way that might resonate with our audience is, and I didn't think of this until you used that example, Crystal, is, a physical fitness coach, right? How many of us have trainers, or know someone who has a trainer that they meet with on a periodic basis to help design a fitness regimen, and then coach them through the regimen. They can't do it for them, but what they can do is they can give them the proper techniques and motivate them to do what they need to do to increase their physical fitness, right? And that's what I really want to connect here is that, and that's kind of what we see our role is how can we take that analogy of the physical fitness and apply it to mental fitness, right? Because I think we all struggle with it, right? To varying degrees, and we all respond differently. But to me, it's no different than understanding when you are not at the physical fitness level you want to be. There's certain exercises or things that you can do to improve your fitness. The brain and mental fitness works exactly the same way, right? Hey, I want to give a little kind of background context, because sometimes I find this happens to me a lot. I just kind of assume people understand everything we're talking about and who we're talking about. So for those of you in the audience that are not familiar with the Joint Special Operations Command, okay, so if you're talking about literally the premier counter-terrorist force in the world, bar none. And it is made up of the best special forces and special operations forces in each of the services: Air Force, Navy, Marines. I mean, it is, and there are subunits in each of those in the Navy and the Air Force and the Army. So you're talking about the highest performing men and women in the military that have a very, very challenging, difficult, highly deployable, high operational tempo. So, I mean, these guys and gals are facing it every day. And I never connected, and it's interesting you bring this up, that you would have been you were in the JMAL, right? The Joint Medical Augmentation Unit. So JSOC and so every area of JSOC has literally the best of the best, in my opinion. And their medical augmentation unit, called the Joint Medical Augmentation Unit, is made up the absolute best that the medical profession in each of the services has to offer. But it makes perfect sense that you'd be sitting in their building and you guys would work together, referring folks back and forth. So anyway, I just want to give a little bit of context for people who don't have a military background, or maybe, or even if you were or are in the military and you're not familiar with that community. I think that's important. Hey, so Crystal, what I'd like to kind of transition to is when you have a patient who suffers with mental fitness challenges, whatever you want to call it. I just prefer to call it mental fitness challenges. Could you share with us what you do to help them? If you can kind of I don't necessarily want to get into specifics of people, although you could refer, but what kind of talk through how you help them overcome those challenges.
And every person is different, and some of that is taking into what's happening with them, what is going on. And when they are, the first priority for me and any other mental health professional is their safety and everyone else's safety around them. And so it's the first thing is starting off with, okay, what we call, kind of that suicide risk assessment, or you can even say, violence risk assessment in some situations, if their thoughts are going towards other people. But really assessing, okay, if they're having, everyone has these thoughts some days where they might wake up and say, oh, I wish I just didn't wake up today, right? And I think people don't realize that that's not abnormal, that so many people have those thoughts. And that doesn't mean that, oh, you need to go into a padded room, right? Which is a fear that everyone has of, oh, if I tell anyone I had this thought, they're going to lock me up. And that's not the case. And that's why I hope you can build a relationship with a professional that can talk you through those of like, is that just a thought? Is it just a thought where you're like, oh, I've had a fleeting thought of suicide? And for some of our military guys, it's every day that they have this thought, and it might just go away within seconds or a minute, but they could have it every day, because of what other things they're battling in their mind. So it's kind of assessing, is it just a thought, or, is there what we call intent? Do they truly want to die? Do they truly want to take their life? And assessing that level of commitment they have of, what's going to happen when they leave my office right now. And then in a plan, do they have a plan of how they're going to do it? And that tells you a lot of what's going on. If someone's like, no, I just want to die, you're like, okay, well, how are you going to do it? Which sounds really morbid, but I will ask you that. If you tell me you're having these thoughts, I'm like, well, how are you going to do it? Tell me about it. Describe it to me. And if they kind of can't, then I know, okay, then we haven't formalized, how this is going to go about. But there are people that, maybe they will go in detail of, I have a gun, I'm going to go to my desk, or, I have these pills. And so then it's like, okay, well, that becomes a whole nother level of danger right there, because you have the means and the plan and you know how you're going to do it. And assessing too of, okay, do they have it? If they say I'm going to shoot myself, do they own guns? Do they have access to guns? In the military, the answer is probably yes. If you're working with veterans.
Especially the community you were in.
Right. Civilian population, I've heard I'm going to shoot myself. Oh, do you have a weapon? No. Does your family have a weapon? No. Okay. Then, the level of risk is a little lower. But it might be, I'm going to swallow pills. Oh, what kind? Tylenol. I'm like, oh, well, that's going to hurt your stomach. Not necessarily there's certain things that, if I'm going to take, 100 Percocet, okay, we have to find out, one, how you got that many. But, there's a whole nother aspect of lethality when you're assessing someone's plan. And then there's within the plan, people can make plans of, they've already written maybe letters to their family. Maybe they've already researched for the military. Will the military still pay out my insurance if I take my life? All these things. That's a lot of forethought, a lot going into this that is quite scary from a professional to sit there and take in of like, okay, this person's truly, truly in danger and an intervention must happen. And then you have to determine is it to the level where they do need to be taken to a hospital and be watched? Or is it something that you can intervene with and bring people in their lives at, can they say, oh, I'm going to shoot myself. And will they hand over their weapons? Will they take them to someone that I would know is not going to give them back to them until, they're in a different state of mind? Because often, especially if we're talking about young, especially men, but young veterans, suicide can be an impulsive act. And so sometimes if you just take some of those means away, it gives enough time for them to get over that impulsive, action that they're about to go through. And a lot of it is bringing in family. If they, if they need their family to say, hey, we need to watch you a little more, we're going to do that. Bringing in the people around them. The military for active duty is a little more complicated because as a professional, then I have to take the risk of, at what point do I break confidentiality? At what point do I tell command? And that's honestly one of the hardest things to decide, because I truly believe in confidentiality and believe that if someone's going to be so vulnerable with me, they need to trust that I will hold that. So for me to take that step means that, that I think that's the only option I have to keep them alive. That command needs to know, and that can go good or bad. But at the end of the day, if someone hates me but they're alive, I'll take that. So it's hard decision for clinicians to make, and it's why we go to school for a long time to have to make those decisions.
What I love, Crystal, is that this is an uncomfortable conversation, but I like that it's an uncomfortable conversation because it's a conversation that we have to have. Right. And it's like, I don't think I've actually ever heard anybody describe the levels like you just did of intent the way you just did. And just that thought that I just said that, wow, no one's ever described that. How many lives could that save? Just describing what you just described. That's incredible. So I just wanted to say that it's uncomfortable, but that's the point, Yeah.
And I've had wives, say, well, maybe he's having these thoughts, but I don't want to report it because it's going to mess up his career and things like that. And I have to push do you want to risk losing his career and having issues at work, or do you want him alive? Right. Priorities. Right. And I don't know that they really think of it in that level. And sometimes you have to put that in someone's face of like, what's the most important? To me, alive is the most important.
I find it fascinating you just went there, because actually that's exactly where I was going to go. And so in full transparency, well, first of all, we've had a number of guests. I think of Colonel Lori Buckhout, who dealt with PTS and other challenges as a result of commanding a signal battalion in the first Gulf War. Obviously, we had Jeff Worthington. We've had a few other guests. Command Sergeant Major Gerald Tice, right? I mean, I could think of a handful of folks that we've spoken to that have wrestled with many challenges. And again, in full transparency, I did, and I do. It's I will tell you straight up that I battled this and continue to battle it throughout my military career. And what you just said was exactly me, right? I would refuse to talk to anybody about it, refuse to seek help because number one, I carried a TSSCI clearance the majority of my career, and I was concerned that if I even marginally spoke about this, that I would potentially have get my clearance downgraded, which then would have meant that if you look at all the jobs I've had, and I had phenomenal experiences, I wouldn't have access to any of them. And that's assuming I could even stay in the military, right? Mm-hmm. So I will tell you, I know exactly how folks feel. And the question is, and I don't know the answer, I don't know that anybody knows the answer, is how do we change that so that, number one, people are more comfortable, one, asking for help, and how do we educate and train chains of command that support that and stand behind and back the individual who needs help? Because, hey, look, it could be just with some minor exercises or tweaks or whatever that they can kind of return to a reasonably normal frame of mind in life and be extremely productive. It doesn't mean that everybody is about to take their life, right? Mm-hmm. But my concern is what I dealt with, and I'm not exactly sure where I fit on that scale, because I never spoke to a professional, but I wasn't even willing to have the discussion. I wasn't even willing to take the risk. So it's fascinating you bring this up, and to be honest with you, Lee, I think that's the biggest challenge we face, right? And that's what that's one of my passions right now is how do we change that? How do we turn that around?
So how I got to ask this as an interviewer, based on what you just said. I'm sorry, Crystal, to do this, but how I have to ask you is, with what you just said, would you have changed that now? Again, we can't go back in time, but if you knew then what you knew now, would you have sought out help?
Yeah, I think if I had someone like Crystal, who I knew was absolutely committed to confidentiality and protecting it,
right?
Then I think I would have felt much more comfortable that conversation or conversations and those sessions would just remain between Crystal and me. Right. I think if I knew that and believed it, I think I would have been more apt to seek help.
So I asked that question because that is also part of the stigma, right? You didn't know that then, that it was not probably available to you then, to be completely fair to you.
Maybe it was. I wasn't even willing to take the risk.
You were not made aware of it, most likely. And it is a two-way street, Howie.
Oh, that's for sure.
Agree,
that's for
right?
sure.
But what I'm saying to you, I agree with you too. I understand that you're saying that you weren't going to do it, but now, Crystal, turning this back to you, just to affirm what Howie says, that is available. It's very important that people understand in the services that you can confidentially speak to someone. And to be fair, look, with what Crystal just said, if you're at the extreme level of intent, like she said, your job, your clearances, and how I'm not equating this to you. I mean, there's a larger thing at play here, right? But Crystal, just based on what Howie says, it is available. And that's, I think it's so important that our audience hears that, right? That you can confidentially find someone to speak about these things.
Yeah, it is. And I want to put some caveats, because there are some duties to command that mental health professionals have regarding, fitness. Right. And majority of the military, you can have much more confidentiality. I will say that I struggled with some of the dealing with the flyers in the Air Force, because any diagnosis I put in their medical record was reviewed by a flight doc.
Right.
And that could or could not have complications for them. And so I had to be very careful of, if this was a diagnosis that I was 100% sure and, understood what the consequences of that could be. But I think that there's also a misconception that people think command, even flight docs, are going to overreact about this of a myriad of things, and that mental health would have to tell them, oh, you're seeing mental health just in general, and we don't, and we really do protect confidentiality as much as we possibly can, given our some of those constraints of the mission involved. I do want to highlight, I'm going to throw the chaplains out there. They have 100% confidentiality. In no way do they have to tell command anything. So if anyone needs to run something by a chaplain first to say, hey, is this something mental health would have to disclose?
Great point. Great resource. Yeah.
That is absolutely, that's gold right there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Chaplains don't have to tell command anything. And so most of the time, those chaplains will convince someone to say, well, let's go over to behavioral health because they're really more equipped to help you with this problem. But there's a bigger conversation to have. So sometimes people feel more comfortable going to a chaplain first, and I totally understand that. And you need to build a relationship with the mental health people, and often, especially when you talk about big military, big Army, big Marine Corps, they may never come across the mental health, so they don't know to trust them. And leadership is key, and I don't think I can stress this enough. And I won't say any names. There have been leaders I've come across that, one, have seen me or other mental health professionals and will go and tell their subordinates of, hey, you need to go talk to someone, not because, hey, I think something's going on and you need to do this to tighten up, right? It's hey, I talked to Crystal. Here's her phone number. That goes leaps and bounds more than anything else. While on the flip side, not to call out Big Army at Fort Bragg, but I don't know if you've seen all the suicides in the last 3 years at Fort Bragg. There were commanders that said, don't go to mental health, they'll ruin your career. And around all this epidemic of suicide. And I'm like, it just killed a part of me, especially when, there were suicides immediately after that. Leadership is the key. Education is the key. If, your fellow buddy can come to you and say, hey, I went to mental health and I'm all good, I still have my clearance, then that will help the next guy. But for some reason, there's still a fear of talking about it. And so when I see these leaders coming out and talking about their own struggles and their own, hey, I went to get help and nothing happened to me. I went to get help and I still hold my clearance. And there are people like me that are embedded that hold a security clearance, so you can tell us anything, so without jeopardizing. Some people say, well, I can't open up because of classified issues. Well, there's plenty of us that, have those security clearances and are read in enough to handle your problems.
Yeah. And Crystal, a couple things come to mind. And I want to bring up Jeff Worthington again, right? And he talked about this on the episode with us, and again, the amount of admiration that I have for that man is I don't know that I could even describe it, but Jeff intentionally would go to his mental health appointments in uniform to ensure that the younger officers, NCOs, and soldiers in that office waiting to see someone would see this is a full bird colonel going to see someone, and they know why he's there, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Jeff didn't have to do that, but he intentionally did that for the reasons you just mentioned. We were talking about before we started the recording, right? I haven't seen the post yet, but I'm going to hunt it down after we finish. An Air Force 2-star general, I understand, had made a social media post on LinkedIn showing his calendar with mental health appointments on that calendar, and is basically saying it is okay to go talk to someone if you need to go talk to someone, right? I completely agree. That's the kind of leadership that we need to see, because I will guarantee you, right? And I can say this with, I would damn near 100% confidence. There ain't no leader in any military position in the U.S. military, or any military for that matter, ain't dealing with problems. Mm-hmm. Now, the depth of their problem and how they manage it, I can't say, but I will absolutely guarantee you they're dealing with it too, right?
I would totally agree with you. I think leaders in general even have more stress and more responsibility and things going on where, okay, who's your shoulder? Who's going to help you carry some of that burden? And I wish more leaders would seek help. And then the ones that do make it so public is an amazing thing, but it needs to be part of that. Yeah. That transparent conversation of it should be as easy as, hey, I'm going to go see the dentist today. Right. No one judges that. So what's the big deal saying, oh, I'm going to go see my psych today? It should be the same thing, because it's not necessarily about having a problem. It's about how can I be the best of who I can be. And I think the military should want that, right? You
I
performing
completely agree.
at your optimal peak, and so, yeah, different units are better with stigma than others. And I can say JSOC is maybe a step ahead of others, because there are leaders that seek mental health, and it's so open of, we need, go and talk to somebody when something's happening, but there's such a fear of what that will mean. And, just put it out there, just seeing mental health will not take away your security clearance. That fear is unfounded. And some of it's just education, that people need to know, that people need to know. And I've talked to some of those younger guys that were in 82nd land who are like, oh, I wanted to go talk to someone, but I really want to put in my packet for this or for that, and I'm afraid it will impact that. And I'm like, I wouldn't be here today working with these guys that have already been in your shoes if it weren't okay. Go to see mental health, put in your packet. It's, it's okay.
Yeah, because they all came from someplace, right?
Right.
They came from, the conventional Army, the conventional Navy, the conventional Air Force, the conventional Marines. They all came from someplace. You're absolutely right. This is a fascinating and I think absolutely critical conversation. And I really, this is exactly what I would hope that we would have gotten into. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your being here. Mm-hmm. So Crystal, kind of in that same vein, I would love for you to kind of describe, based on what you've learned or continue to learn in because it's a continuous learning process, right? What kind of advice or guidance or what could you help folks who are listening if they, take better care of themselves, whether in uniform, and I don't care whether you're in uniform or not, but how could you kind of advise and mentor and coach them that might help slow this trend of veteran suicide we're seeing, and then address any other mental issues or mental fitness issues that they're dealing with?
Yeah, I think that being true to yourself and being honest with yourself of what's going on is key. And being that kind of brave enough to ask for help, or sometimes just leaning on those around you, which is hard for a lot of military, especially when they're kind of that alpha type A, I will carry the world's burdens on me, and, I can do it all by myself. Well, right. If you're on a mission, you'd be having your buddy have your six, right? So it's okay.
Absolutely.
It's okay to say, I need someone to have my six on this. And, there's a lot of tools, and I think finding the right things that work for you, even if you're not going to seek therapy and things like that, knowing that the military's given you a lot of tools in your toolbox, right? And you just kind of have to maybe tweak them a little bit to apply to everyday life. Find what works for you in the military, and then how do you just tweak it for other things? I think one of the good memories I have of working with a sniper, he had anxiety, right? Not during deployments, because he was always so focused and so everything. So then it's like, but at home, what's happening, right? You're out of your element, but how do we get you back into that zone? And I was like, well, we do this, psychologists will do this mindfulness things of breathing techniques, and which are really great. I really hope people can look into them. But how do we apply those to a big sniper who's like, oh, I'm a tough guy. I'm like, well, walk me through how you shoot. Walk me through what gets you in that zone. And I kind of realized that for him, he already had the breathing techniques down. he already had how to relax himself and get centered when he goes to shoot. So I'm like, okay, well, throw everything out the window. You need to go to the range, And I'm like, and someone was like, okay, you need to find that and learn how to apply that driving down the street when you have road rage, right? And use those skills you already have.
Yeah, fascinating.
In different environments. And of course, he was like, well, can you write in a prescription pad to my wife that I need to go shoot more?
Like that. I want to mention too that this applies beyond the military. I remember for the longest time, I said I was an athlete most of my life. And I've talked about this before in the show. I remember that it was a moment that I realized I can apply all of the stuff I use in ice hockey to other things. And it was this, people, you say, of course you can. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that the extreme focus I was putting on the game and my training and the dedication, I just didn't realize that. And when I did, I started applying it to several other things. And it was there. I was so well trained in it. It was just there. I just had to kind of reformat how I'm doing it. But you can get lost, completely lost, what's it called? Tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah. Well, I can only apply it to this. If you can apply it to something, you can apply it to anything. Muscle memory, mental memory, right? It's the same thing. Like, and just to be clear, I'm not just talking about professional adventures. You can apply this to parenting. You can apply this to being a good spouse. You can apply this to coaching other people. Right? It's just, once I found, I should say, unlocked that ability, which again sounds so simple, but it's just not. Once you unlock it, it's simple. But getting up to that point, it changed my life, completely changed my life. So especially with the community you're dealing with, Crystal, the skill sets are there. It's just, you just have to be able to unlock that.
Right. So, that community, they're brilliant men and women. They're probably some of the smartest men and women in our country, which is a challenge for me because, they, of course, like to test me from time to time. They come in and they're like, do I really trust this person? So you say something and they'd pop out, well, I've done my research and research says this, and I better know what I'm talking about or they're never going to come back.
Right. They come in prepared.
Because then they prepare, right?
Yeah.
They prepare for a mission. They were prepared for therapy.
Right.
But I could use that because those same people, if I gave them an assignment for homework, to do, well, they would do it.
Right.
Because, they would set their, and that was so great to see because that's how you get through something faster, is working on it every single day, not just once a week or every other week.
So, it's interesting as you're talking, and based on what I've learned literally in just the last 30 days and maybe even a little bit longer, this applies even to the military transition process, right? It is incredible to me to learn how many people will go into this military transition process and not ask for help. Right. For whatever reason, it's arrogance or I'm a first sergeant or I'm a commander and I'll be able to find a job. And then they have a problematic transition, or I can do this and they can't. Right. Or they take a job without being prepared to do. And I was one of those too. Right. Goes into the business world with absolutely no education, understanding of what it takes to be successful in business. And then on top of it goes into government contracting. And I had no clue about the federal acquisition regulations and the whole request for proposal process. And I can go on and on and on. That could be a whole nother episode, right? So I was floundering. I was freaking floundering for 6 to 8 months. So here I was, I commanded multiple times from platoon level up to brigade level, right? My last job, White House Communications Agency, right, provided a full range of communication support for the President of the United States. And man, I was struggling for 6 to 8 months. I had more sleepless nights in that first job than I did in the 3rd Ranger Battalion, in JSOC, in the WACA. I had sleepless nights because I didn't know what the hell I was doing and I wasn't adding any value, right? But
you didn't feel like you were adding any value. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't adding any value, and hey, listen, and I'm not just saying that to be humble. I'm telling you, I was not adding any value.
Right.
So, but my point here is that many men and women do not adequately prepare for the military transition process. I don't care whether it's you've been in 4 years, 34 years, and I see it all the time. And what the amazing thing is that if you do a simple thing and just ask for help, there are incredible resources in veteran service organizations, people, and I'm uncovering them, so many of them now, that if you just ask for help, we can now point you to those resources, and they'll help you write the resume. They'll help you do mock interviews. They'll help you figure out what you want to do. They'll help you improve your LinkedIn profile. They'll help you use LinkedIn to deepen and broaden your professional network. They'll help you plan and prepare informational interviews to help you learn, figure out, what do I want to do, and who's doing it already that I can learn from. I mean, I can go on and on and on.
Well, you don't have to worry about losing your clearance or your job either at this point.
But it reminds me so much, Crystal, of, I just like someone who's being challenged from a mental fitness perspective, doesn't ask for help or is afraid to ask for help for whatever reason. And I see it in the military transition space as well. And here's why I bring that up. I joined a veteran mentor network LinkedIn group about a month ago. Probably 170,000 members over the course of a 10-year period. But one of the founders of and the guy who owns the network, he posted something that it just floored me. He linked problematic transitions to the high rate of veteran suicide. And it's anecdotal. It's not based on any research, but it makes so much sense. Just think about it, right? Number one, when you're in the military, you're part of a community, right? Whatever it is, you're a part of a community and you have a sense of purpose. And then when you get out, if you have done nothing to replace that community outside the military with another community, and you have done nothing to find another sense of purpose outside of what you did in the uniform, now you're struggling, right? And if you have a problem finding employment, okay, you have another problem, which now creates financial stress, depending on how well you saved money and invested money and grew your portfolio over the years, which most people in the military haven't done. So now you have financial stress. If you're married, that's going to lead to marital stress. That's going to lead to alcohol abuse, drug abuse. And now you find yourself in a downward spiral that many feel they can't climb out of. And so the way now they choose to numb the pain is to take their life. I had never connected a problematic military transition to veteran suicide, the veteran suicide rate. I was thinking it's TBS. I mean, it's PTS, it's TBI, it's combat wounds. That's kind of where my head was at. And once he connected me to that thought, it gave me a real renewed passion, to get after this, from the Charlie Mike channel and Pivotal Moments, and really kind of even change the focus of just being about the military transition process to that is one of many ways where maybe we can stem this trend of veteran suicide. So, so it's interesting as you describe what you're describing, Crystal, I'm making this connection to the military transition process. I mean, it's a significant issue,
It is. And I don't know if you are aware, but the first 3 years of getting out of the military have the highest rate of suicide.
Yeah.
Those first 3 years. So it goes right in that's where, transition has to play in that, because why is it that it's those years that are the highest rate? It's concerning.
That's fascinating statistic. And again, that even deepens my passion now. I was lucky. that I worked for, in fact, I'm working for one of them again, Bob Morgan, but the two co-founders of the company I joined, I was with them for 6 years. I could not have worked for two more caring leaders than Rob Franklin and Bob Morgan. And that's why I'm with Bob Morgan again, who's the founder and CEO of Pivotal Moments Media. When they recognized that I was having a problem, and I'll tell you how they recognized it, right? They didn't sit in their office all day, right? We had 3 floors in a 12-story building in Tyson's Corner, and they walked the floors, right? They would pop into offices of people who work there, and over time, you know, hey, Bob would say, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, after a while, I was like, "Hey, Bob, I'm struggling, man. I have a problem here. I don't feel you're paying me, and I don't feel like I'm adding any value. You're not getting any return on investment." So no, you're being too hard on yourself. No, Bob, I'm serious, man. I ain't doing squat for you right now. And this is really bugging me, because I was used to going into an organization in a fairly short amount of time. You felt like you were adding value. Whether I'd been there before, right? I mean, in the military, I felt like I could go into virtually any assignment, and within a reasonably short period of time, I felt like I was adding value. I've been there 6, 8, almost 10 months, and I felt nothing. And you know what they did? Instead of putting more pressure on me, instead of cutting me loose, you know what they did? They hired a consultant to come in for a better part of 3 months and met with me on a week or bi-weekly basis. And he coached me through business principles and set up exercises for me to do to improve my understanding of business and to help me, you know, learn about business development, to learn about the whole government contracting process. In fact, we had him as a guest on a podcast, Ed Abner, if anybody have seen that episode. So I was lucky, man. Number one, I asked for help. And number two, I worked for two incredibly caring leaders that were willing to make an additional investment in me. And they didn't have to do that, right? But they did. And then things turned around, and eventually our business unit got acquired by our larger company. And I was one of 3 key leaders that helped that business unit integrate into a bigger one. You know, but man, I would have been one of those. I'm not saying I would have been a suicide victim, but I was struggling in those first couple of, certainly the first year of my transition.
Mm-hmm. It's such a delicate time, and I think it's, for some, it is that purpose, I think, is a really big key of maintaining that purpose. For some people, it's finding just the right fit where they're going. I think the other thing that's not maybe talked about a whole lot that I witnessed was people ignored mental health for 20 years of their career. And they functioned just fine because they never slowed down. And they kept going, kept deploying and this things, and maybe
you get good at masking it too, Crystal. You know what I mean? You get good at just playing a freaking game with yourself and everybody around you. You just mask it, man, And
other military people make excuses because they all have some of the same issues. So if you blow up and have an anger episode at work, it was almost accepted, which is not accepted in the civilian world, right? Doesn't go over.
I could tell you a story about that too. The first time I ever got fired from a job, that's exactly what happened to me.
Because the culture is so different, and what's acceptable, not acceptable. And people might have gone through divorces and things, not even maybe related them to their own mental health issues that maybe didn't cause it, but certainly didn't help their marriage. So they get out and they have this time on their hands, and then it all starts coming. If you have PTSD, all those things start coming back, and it gets harder to go to the grocery store to be around people. And it gets harder to drive around without road rage, and all these things that you ignored for so long. But you know what? You never treated them.
Yep.
So they're still there, and the floodgates open, and it's just so overwhelming. And then you're out of the system. Even if you ask for help, the VA is probably backlogged, and you didn't take the time before you got out to start your paperwork to the VA to get in smoothly, because you can do that, right? But people don't know that and haven't done it, and they just get out and then are lost. And then it gets overwhelming. And I saw a lot of guys that were about to retire come in and say, okay, well, now that my career is ending, time to work on me, And I'm like, well, that's great, but have you really been living the last 15 of your years of your life like this? Like, whoa, we could have helped you so much earlier and gone through this. And then it's like, well, now you're getting out. There's only so much I can do in 4 weeks, right? So then it's like, okay, well, how can I connect you with services on the outside? Because I can't finish this. This is too long of a process. So some of it's like get help while you're in when you can, but then you get out and know that, okay, you're not alone. And
Right.
that's the
Crystal,
biggest.
let me ask you this too, just as another metaphor. I'm a big metaphor guy, right? That would be akin to letting yourself go physically for 15 years, eating
It's just what
crap,
I was thinking.
not working out, right?
Yep.
And then
Mhm.
going to the
Exactly what I was
gym
thinking.
and expecting in 4 weeks to be in perfect health.
Right.
It's not realistic. And your mind, your mental fitness is the same thing. It cannot be solved in a week or 4 weeks, or really even just a few months. It takes a long time
Mhm.
and practice. And I've said this before, when you feel like you've got it, you can't stop, because if you stop, it's just like stopping going to the gym. You're gonna,
That's
so
exactly right.
that's why we say mental fitness, because it's akin to physical fitness. But that, yeah, Howie, I'm glad you're thinking that too, because it's unrealistic. It's a completely unrealistic expectation.
Hey, I have a question for you, Crystal. And this is a personal experience I have. Lee knows this. I am one of those guys who's very much into the value of mindfulness and meditation, and I commit to doing a minimum of anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes of meditation, of some form of meditation every day. But my challenge is consistency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will do it for 3 months, 4 months. I'll work out. I'll exercise, I'll get out and walk, I'll, lift weights, whatever. And then I don't know what happens every once in a while, I stop. And then one day turns into 2 days, and 2 days turns into a week, and a week turns into a month, and a month turns into 3 months, and now I'll get myself back going again. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the question I really want to ask you is, here's something I've noticed about me, and I'm kind of curious from your experience is, so I'm very committed when I'm doing it to doing mindful and meditation practice. I've noticed that when I finally do get back on the right track, within a day or two of meditating again, it's like I'm right back into it. It doesn't take me the 4 weeks. Now, this is just the physical thing, completely different story, right? But the mental fitness part of it is, I've noticed, because I was doing it consistently for 3, 4, 5 months every day, that literally within 1 or 2 days, if I went back to meditating or some kind of mindful practice, it's like, boom, I was like firing on all cylinders, at least from a mental point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, does that make sense? And any thoughts on that?
It does make some sense, because you're looking at, you already had the skill set. So developing a new skill is harder. And so you have to practice things like mindfulness to get good at it. I try to explain that to people when they will try it out. And I'm like, oh, don't give up when it doesn't work the first time. You have to keep practicing it. And
Right.
because your body has to get used to that feeling to do it naturally, and it becomes quicker, right? The more you work on muscle relaxation and things like that, the quicker it'll be, once you kind of get it down and your body's used to it. So it's kind of that muscle memory, and there's like that mental memory. You got out of the habit, but then you have to, get back in is quicker because the skills are already there. It's just
and I guess the neural pathways have been developed to some degree. And I mean, it's just like, unlike physical fitness, where you cannot get back in within a week or 2 or 3, I just felt like, I got back very quickly.
Well, how do you know how to ride a bike?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
That's mental.
Of course, I didn't learn until I was 11 years old, Lee, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Well, they say that, but the first time I decided I was going to go mountain biking and, clip in and everything. By the way, I hadn't ridden a bike since I was a child. Fell on my face.
Right.
It was
but did you get it back after that?
Like I could get, yes.
Yeah. No, my point is this, is like if you haven't ridden a bike in a while, the first few pedals are, they're a little awkward because you haven't done it in a while, but you will, I mean, again, I'm not talking about so much mountain biking, but you will figure that out pretty quickly. You've developed it. So sometimes I wonder how, with like mental stuff, if it's just, you've developed it, it's just dormant when you're not using it.
Yeah,
it is. And we see that when people come in and see us maybe for a long period of time through therapy, and you work through things and you've gone through whatever hurdles that person need to go through. And then you can say, okay, you graduated from therapy, right? go on to the world and do great things. Well, then
Yeah.
you need to leave the door also open for them to come back.
Right,
Because
that's
sometimes
right.
it might be 6 months, sometimes it might be 3 years. They
Yep.
come back and they just need that refresher to
Yep.
remember, what were those skills again? Because somehow I stopped using them.
Well,
Yeah.
now you're alluding to our final question, but before we do that, it's commonplace on this show.
Oh, my favorite part of the
Oh,
show.
no.
So
Have you
he goes,
listened to any? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if you have listened to our podcast in the past, this is my absolute favorite part of the show.
So Crystal, what I do is every guest gets a book title, right? I listen to everything you say, and it always just comes to me at some point in the episode. But maybe you have written a book, but if you were to write another one, I come up with a title for you, right? Every guest gets one of these. Okay?
I don't know how he does this, man. You talk about creativity, but
some of them are funny, some of them are serious. Yours is kind of right there. You said something early in the episode that really resonated with me. And this is, I mean, and also your name leads to this title. I'm sure you've heard it, but the title of your book is Crystal Clear, Having Your Six on the Mental Fitness Front.
I love it.
I like that. I'm gonna have to
Right.
write that one down.
I love it.
Yeah, I take royalties, by the way. So no, joking aside, listen, I loved that analogy. You said this halfway through the episode about, well, I can do it alone, but when they're out in the field, someone's got your six.
Mhm.
I thought that was brilliant. And that added in the mental fitness front, right? And maybe that's another way of looking at it. Someone's got to have your six with this, right? And that will actually transition us to the final question, because I'll actually, volunteer myself here a little bit too. We all deal with mental fitness challenges, like all of us. And Pivotal Moments, our parent company, we're seeking to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. We all struggle with it. I'd like to hear, and again, I'll share a quick story with you first. If you've had to deal with this in your life, and then you've already talked about some of the things you do to practice keeping yourself mentally fit and how you take on those challenges and strengthen yourself. And, we talked a lot about military transition in this episode. I've alluded multiple times that I was an athlete. Transition affects everyone, whether it's military, sports, just changing a job, leaving college to go into the real world. I've been very fortunate in my life, Crystal, as a coach. I've been blessed to win a lot. Right. Some would say it's been a very successful coaching career. When I got done playing at 22, 23 and transitioned to coaching, I thought I was ready. And it's like we talked about how I knew what I was doing. I was a good coach. I knew. Here's what people don't know. I have no problem saying this. I cried myself to sleep on the bus every night home from away games in my bed. I was devastated because I wasn't playing. Right. And at the time, I remember thinking, like, just get over it. You got to get past this. You're a coach now. I was blessed that I did have a semi-support system. I had a team. I had a purpose. Right. Those blanks were filled in. But even with that, I was devastated after every game because I wasn't out there playing. Right. I didn't even have the, I'm 40 years old, I don't have it anymore thing at that time. I have that now. But but back then I did. I mean, I was very capable. I just fell into coaching and I was ready to do it. I remember thinking I can still play. I could get out there and play. I should go back to the minors every night. And I cried. I'm not exaggerating. I cried. And I hid. I acted like I was sleeping on the bus. I would put the hoodies and stuff over my head and I would cry. I was not ready for that transition. I didn't seek help out from anybody. I clearly needed it. Right. Now I want to make sure I say this. I'm not trying to equate that to the severity of a military transition. I'm just trying to say we all deal with it at varying degrees. Right. If you were in the military and you were doing what you have to do, I'm humbled by you. But even I, who comes across as very confident, people tell me that, right, dealt with this. And I still deal with it today. I'm a leader.
I would say
today.
actually cockily, but
I was thinking that too, Howie, but a cocky person wouldn't say that. They would call it confidence. No, but because you said this too, as leaders, I'm a leader here. I own multiple businesses. And for the first time in my life.
And very successful businesses.
Thank you, Howie. First time in my life, Kristen, this is true. I've actually never said this. First time in my life, I've had thoughts I should go talk to someone. I'm not thinking correctly right now, and I should go talk to him. I've reached out to Howie, or Howie has reached out to me and said, "Are you all right?" And just like Howie said, you know what? I'm not. Something's off, and he's there for me. You know what I mean? It's just that. No, I'm not okay.
Right.
Just saying that, and it's freeing to not have the stigma behind it of I can't ask for help. I can't ask for help. We didn't even get into family patterns today. We're not going to. That's a whole nother episode, right? Of how much of this stuff comes from childhood.
Right.
But anyway, Crystal, back to you. Howie, again, this has been like a therapy session for Howie. I apologize, but you yourself.
Yeah. Hey, Crystal, who do I? How much?
For the
And
bill
where do I send the check to?
Yeah, just Bill Pivotal Moments Media. I'm sure Bob will love that. Joking aside, Crystal, listen, you don't have to get too personal with this, but you yourself, like we all deal with it, right? So what is your process? How do you combat? It's not the right word, but how do you challenge yourself to continually get better at this?
Yeah, I would say I'm as stubborn, bullheaded as probably the operators that I worked with, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So I myself have had my own struggles saying when, hey, I can't handle this on my own. I tend to first, more so now acknowledge when I need a mental health day. If we can call in sick for a cold,
Right.
we should be able to call in sick because we're not mentally present.
I totally agree with that.
And there's what good are we going to do in the office? And I have to look at it as whatever patient I'm supposed to be seeing, I'm not doing them a service seeing them if I'm not right.
Right.
And so, sometimes you gotta take a knee.
It should be commonplace to have that. And again, I hear from employers all the time. It's important to talk about this. Like, we can't do that. People will abuse it. People abuse sick days all the time. So if you're worried about that, just give a select number amount. And adversely, Crystal, I worked at the NHL. I'll say it. One of the best policies they had was unlimited sick days. And they told us the day we started, we trust you. If you abuse it, you're going to get fired, but we trust you. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Nobody, to my knowledge, ever abused that.
That's been my experience too, Lee.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so I think we need to acknowledge that. And as a society as a whole, Americans tend to go. And we need to acknowledge it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take a day off. It's okay to lay in bed and watch, a marathon of whatever TV show you want to watch.
Yellowstone.
Yeah, just not Tiger King. Don't do the Tiger King.
No Tiger King. But whatever it is that you need to shut off your mind, it's okay to say, I need to shut it off sometimes. And there's been times as, I've called home from work or let's say I had a really bad session where it got to me because, we take on a lot of people's things where I've had, I can't come home right now because I can't bring this home.
Right.
I need to go either debrief with another professional or I need to drive around a million times for the next hour until I'm ready to enter my home because my home is my
mindfulness,
safe place.
I think that's so important. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's so important to learn I am not in the right mindset to have a conversation with someone, especially if that someone's your spouse or your children. Mm-hmm. Or people really close to you. I've made that mistake more times than I'd care to think about. I'm really aware now. If I'm pissed off or I'm just not feeling right, I will not pick up the phone. I will not go to that person. I will not even write the email. Mm-hmm. It's not out as being stubborn. I'm not in the right mindset to do this. It's so important to be aware of that. I'm sorry to cut you off, Crystal. This stuff's awesome.
It's acknowledging that in yourself and saying when you need a break. And sometimes it is telling people around, you don't have to even go into detail. For me, it's calling home and be like, you know what, I'm having a bad day, or, I need to just have my space. I need to come home and take a bath and read a book, and I need to be left alone. And my daughter now knows when I would come home, be like, I need to be alone for a minute. Mom's not doing so good. She'd be like, gotcha. And
and you're teaching her to do that too in that process.
Yeah, we don't know the things she has learned when she was 12 years old, coming home, that person did not respect my space and my boundaries. And I'm like, oh God, I'm like, I've created a monster here.
And that's why we do this show through Zoom now. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, it's knowing when you need that time for yourself, taking that time for mindfulness. And I have gotten my own psychologist before to say, hey, I could do this on my own, but I could probably do it a lot faster and a lot more effective with someone else reminding me to stop being the psychologist and what tools I need to use, because I will forget them. I can teach all day, right? These
Right.
interventions, but applying them to myself, every once in a while I need someone to come up and be like, hey, smack me in the face a little bit, remind me, you need to do this. And I think that's important. I have had my psychologist. We promote that in mental health, that we all have our own providers when you need them. Again, I've also fired my own psychologist. And I think that's important to know. Not everyone's a good fit. And because you've had maybe a bad experience with one provider, doesn't mean that that's what mental health is,
Right.
and doesn't mean that that's how it can be. It can just be a bad fit or a bad, there's bad psychologists out there just as there are bad, other doctors out there.
Right. Let's just say that. Yeah.
And it's okay to say, you're not the run for me, and go to someone else. And I mean, I've had to do that where, I've sat there, I'm like, then I felt bad. I was like, gosh, how many people is this person seeing that don't know that they can just walk out and get someone else,
Right.
But it's important to know that one bad experience doesn't mean you won't have a really great experience later. Because we do a kind of that disservice of professionals that maybe aren't the good fit, don't have that openness of saying, even with me, if I have someone that's not working with, I can say, hey, if this isn't working, we don't have the right mesh if I'm not helping you the right way, well, let's talk about it. And let's get you to someone who's maybe a better fit, whether it's a personality difference, whether it's, could be anything. And people are afraid to talk about that sometimes.
Right.
But finding what works for you, and being true to yourself, and saying when something doesn't work for you, or saying when you need help and you need someone to just help guide you, just give me a little step up a little bit and I can go the rest of the way. Sometimes that's all we need.
It's a phenomenal statement and way to end this episode. That's what I say.
Listen, this was even better than I could have expected it to be. Chris, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for making the time for us. Thank you for sharing your experience and invaluable perspective and advice. And I personally, I mean, if nobody else finds value in this, I sure as hell found value in this. But I guarantee if anybody gives this episode a listen or a view, I cannot imagine you walking away and not having derived tremendous value from this conversation, and not from me, but from Crystal, and maybe from Lee. But
It's such a cocky thing to say, Howie. You know what I mean?
No, seriously, this is exactly what I had hoped would come out of this, and I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. And I look forward to a growing personal and professional relationship as well. And we'll talk more about that after we shut down the cameras. But Lee, over to you.
Yeah, Crystal, look, thanks so much for being here. Want to let everybody know you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by Pivotal Moments Media. And we hope that you received value from our podcast, like Howie just said. And if you did, subscribe to our podcast, rate us on Apple Podcasts, and share it with others to help get the word out. You can also learn about our organization, pivotalmomentsmedia.com. Go take the time to check it out. We have a lot of channels on there that deal with mental fitness. We have an education center. We offer a lot of inspirational and educational content for you. So for Howie Cohen and Dr. Crystal Redding, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks so much for listening to Life After the Military, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day, everybody.